So many people are saying that this manga slaps, but I feel like people have trouble pinpointing exactly why it does. I just read up to the current chapter, and as of recording this video, it's chapter 149, and yeah, this manga is definitely something. It's dark, like, why the fuck did some of that stuff need to happen type of dark. So yeah, this is basically an adult version of Zootopia, except instead of the carnivores being drugged into bringing out their savage sides, the carnivores just naturally have these feral instincts within them that they are constantly struggling to keep control of. And yes, eating meat in this world is very illegal, and there are some dire consequences if you do. The author of the series, Peru Itagaki, may try to lead you into thinking that this story takes place in 2018 Japan, but I'm going to be completely honest, it might as well take place in 1970s Alexandria, Virginia. This world is racist. There are activists calling for segregation, and many people are against interspatial couples. So let's meet a protagonist. We have Lugosi the Grey Wolf, named after Bela Lugosi, and Luis the Red Deer, named after, I presume, the French kings. Lugosi is an 18-year-old ex-convict, one-fourth kimono dragon bastard son of a random model guy and a super self-conscious anorexic hybrid mother who committed suicide. Luis is a 19-year-old who is a victim of the livestock raising system in the back alley market, which is basically the Beastars world equivalent to a human trafficking ring. He got adopted by a rich fuck named Oguma, who is not a nice person, and Luis is very suicidal and mentally destroyed because he sees himself as nothing but livestock who deserves to die like the little deer he thinks he was born to be. So he constantly strives to become very strong, but ends up doing outlandish and crazy things like dropping out of high school to become the leader of the mafia just to prove to himself that he could be strong. So yeah, those are the two characters that we follow. A lot of mental baggage there. The manga is ongoing, but so far we are on the 4th arc, and it has been wild to say the least. The structure of each arc is that usually Lugosi has some dating trouble and sometimes some legal trouble that he has to deal with, all the while the antagonist of the arc is being built up in the background. Luis usually goes off and does some crazy shit, which occasionally intersects with Lugosi's story, until the climactic finale of the arc where Lugosi and Luis face off against the antagonist. Whether it be beating up someone on stage during a live performance, busting a cap down a lion mafia leader's throat, Luis forcing Lugosi to eat his leg to break his livestock curse. Luis is fucking crazy, remember that. So that Lugosi has the strength to beat a murderer or a... Well, I mean, the 4th arc hasn't ended yet, so we don't exactly know what the climax will be like, but judging how fucking creepy this antagonist is, I'm sure it will be pretty damn interesting. What I feel is another reason why this manga is so well received is because of the way that the characters are written. Itagaki does not rely on tropes. She writes these characters as if they were real people with multiple layers, and that's something not everyone could accomplish. A really good example of this is the character Juno. When you first meet her, Itagaki tries to trick you into thinking that she's one of those "aw, how cute, must protect" type of characters, but then pulls a 180 on you when she shows that she's a really confident person who wants to assume the title of Beastar and steal it away from Luis. Then as the story goes on, we get to see her insecurities and the cracks in her confidence, and that's why I like Itagaki's writing style. She builds characters off of their flaws and makes them constantly try to improve themselves, and it's a really interesting way to do character arcs. Also, speaking of the title of Beastar, what exactly is a Beastar? It's basically like a job position where you are one of the elites of society. You have a lot of sway on whatever you set your interest to. Usually, they're the valedictorians of their schools, or like the #1 athletes of their school, or something like that. They're just the top of society. One of the current standing Beastars, Yafia, is a vigilante of sorts. After the cops arrest people, he judges them personally, and if he doesn't like them... well, I'll get into that when I talk about the current arc we're on. The main conflict of the story is that Lugosi is trying to deal with society itself. The Beastar society is very strict. Same-species couples are the norm. Lugosi himself is already an exception to this rule. His grandfather, Gosha, who is probably one of the best characters in this entire series, is a kimono dragon who married a grey wolf, which seems, yeah, it seems very taboo. Lugosi inherited his grandfather's eyes, strength, height, pain resistance, and the attraction for animals of other species. Lugosi happens to fall in love with a white rabbit, which is even more unusual because he is a carnivore and she is an herbivore, and there is a heavy chance that Lugosi could give in to his feral instincts and eat her. Lugosi also suffers from something I like to call the big dumb. He has terrible common sense. He was finally about to kiss Haru, and then out of nowhere he's like, 23,000 yen. That's how much I have in my bank account. And then about 20 chapters after that, he falls asleep next to Haru after he drank a coffee that stimulated his feral instincts, and he didn't even think to take out his dentures so he didn't risk killing her. He stops in the middle of a life or death fight and does a French girl pose just to talk about his opponent's feelings. Legoshi is the type not to think of the direct consequences of his actions, and that's why he doesn't hesitate to break character on stage and beat up the lead's understudy. Oh, and speaking of the big dumb, you know who else has it? Sega. They are sleeping on all these amazing franchises and do almost nothing with them. Oh, and also stop naming all your characters Mamma Mia. Speaking of Ren, him and Legoshi are part of the 17-year-old at one point ex-convict whose school uniform looks like Pajama Pants Club. I should probably talk about the ex-convict thing. Look, with most Beastars videos, people only really talk about what's been officially translated, which are the first 2 volumes of the manga. I want to discuss the 3rd and 4th arcs because I feel like they have many moments that make Beastars the iconic dark manga that it is. So in the climax of the 3rd arc, Luis forces Legoshi to eat his foot, and because of that, Legoshi is filed as a predatory offender. With this on his record, it will be almost impossible for him to marry a herbivore. Legoshi then decides to drop out of high school and live life as it comes. A lot of people I know didn't really like this change in setting because it meant characters like Pina and Bill weren't really going to be relevant anymore. But I mean, I don't mind the new characters at all. In fact, Gosha and Yafia are really interesting. Alright, time to talk about Yafia again. So here's an iconic scene. Yafia invited Legoshi to have dinner, and Yafia doesn't really like Legoshi because Legoshi is the grandson of his old partner Gosha. He's mad at Gosha because he stepped down from being Yafia's partner to have a kid instead of assuming the title of Beastar alongside with him. So knowing that Beastars is dark, how do you think this scene will pan out? You would think, oh, he would just yell at Legoshi and Legoshi would probably just leave. Well, it happens, but, Yafia gives Legoshi a nice carrot dinner. Then out of nowhere, Yafia explains that the fertilizer he used to grow his carrots were the dead bodies of the drug cartel members that Legoshi beat up and arrested a couple days ago. Yeah. Then he tells Legoshi to beg for his life and apologize for being born as a carnivore. So Legoshi gets on the ground, rips out his teeth, punches Yafia, then runs away. So, yeah, I think that gives you a perspective on what this manga is like. Anything dark that could happen will happen. This is only one example. I'm not going to even talk about the castration scene. Anyway, I mentioned Melon. Yeah, he's the antagonist of the current arc we are on, and he's also the creepiest character we have ever had in the entire series so far. So he's a hybrid, and this character exists to make Legoshi struggle with the idea of going out with Haru because he can have a child who suffers just like Melon. Melon doesn't have a sense of taste, so he gets off on the feeling of pain because that is one of the only things he can feel. Look, I'm really happy that Legoshi has figured out about nature versus nurture in one of the most recent chapters because I think Legoshi really just needed to realize that if he raised his child right, then yeah, they wouldn't turn out like a sadistic fuckbag like Melon did. Melon has a really disturbing scene where he becomes the new head of the mafia and brings in unknown meat. One of the members says that it's against their code to eat meat and not honor whose body it came from. So Melon does basically the most fuckiest thing he can. He takes his fork and stabs it into that mafia member's arm and says the name of the meat that we'll be eating is you. Thank God they found an excuse that still allowed Luis to hide. But, God, the scene was still disturbing as hell. I mean, I feel bad for Melon, but like, he is a manipulative psychopath. He tricks Legoshi into setting him free just so he could shoot him fucking twice. Melon is there to make Legoshi question if his own actions are right, and that combined with the horror aspects of Melon's actions, in my opinion, he is probably the best antagonist we've had so far. Also, one little extra note, if Legoshi and Haru were to have a kid within the next year, that would make Gosha a great-grandfather in his 50s. Wow. I mean, to put it in perspective, by the time Legoshi turned 18, his grandfather was 53. I just turned 18, and my dad is 53. That's why I see Gosha as a father that Legoshi never had. I know I keep referencing how great Gosha is, but I think I'm going to make a whole separate video talking about why he's a great character, so look out for that. Also, I've been praising this manga this entire time, but no, I'll admit, nothing is perfect. This is Itagaki's first full-fledged manga, and she never intended it to be a shonen, and at times I feel she tries a little too hard to make it fit into the shonen category. This is not an example of this, but I do want to point out this anyway. This series is fairly grounded. There's no magic or anything like that, but for some reason when it comes to moths, things get a little strange. When Legoshi eats a single moth, it causes all of his hair to grow back within 10 minutes of him doing so. Like, that's not how hair growth works. Also, when Legoshi was fighting Ritz, he was able to make Ritz hallucinate that Legoshi turned into a pile of moths. It made no sense and was never explained. Okay, onto the shonen thing. Itagaki is trying to make it as little of a shonen as possible, but I feel like at the beginning of the 4th arc, she gets a little too fight heavy. Like, I know it's supposed to show that Legoshi himself is letting his violent side slip out a little too much, but still, it throws off the weight that fights had before. Before, there was a fight in the rising action, and then a fight in the climax of an arc. That's what made the fights so special, because they were few and far between. But I mean, Itagaki calms the fight frequency back down when she gets further into the arc, so it's all good. So not to ignore the elephant in the room here, yeah, Beastars has an anime that is currently out, and is on episode 2 by the time I'm posting up this video. It's animated in CG, which looks okay. I mean, when I first watched it, it felt like I was watching a Fire Emblem Three Houses cutscene because it looked a little choppy. But I mean, what are you gonna do? I mean, this series basically is what if Dimitri went to high school in the modern era. I mean, him and Legoshi are both young adults with anger problems that manifest in very violent ways. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I really hope that this animation style can still display the dark and action-packed scenes without it looking like a stilted mess. I really want to see what one of my favorite fights, the on-stage live performance Bill fight, looks like animated in CG. I don't like how the anime represents Legoshi using his feral instincts, though, because it looks like he's using one for all, and for something that wasn't really, like, shown off in the manga, it really shouldn't be a big effect here in the anime. Like, in the manga, it just activates, simple as that. There's no red veins going throughout Legoshi's body or whatever. Also, the soundtrack is a little... it doesn't really fit the theme. It sounds like you're watching a folksy, lighthearted drama about cute little animals, but... no, lighthearted isn't exactly the tone of this series. Also, Luis looks off. His head is just very different from how it looks in the manga. Something I'm really glad they did, though, is pay attention to how they did Legoshi's eyes. Keeping his eyes tiny is important because it's supposed to represent the lizard eyes he inherited from Gosha. Also, I'll admit, the opening is really great. I was going to make a battle tendency meme about it, but someone already beat me to the punch, so instead, I'm going to do this. I want to thank you guys for watching this, and yes, the Gosha video is in the works. So is the Shin Megami Tensei 4 video I promised all the way back in June. That one is not going to come for a while because it's one of my favorite video games and I want to make a video that's probably like an hour long about it. So, it's a lot of work. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching.